October 17th, 1943. The British Naval Command in Beirut awaits a signal that will never arrive. His Majesty's Submarine Trooper, with 64 men aboard, has fallen silent somewhere in the Aegean Sea. For 81 years, its fate remained one of the war's unresolved mysteries, a ghost in the unforgiving waters patrolled by the enemy. Until now. Recently, at a depth of over 700 feet, marine researchers located the submarine's wreck. But the discovery has raised more questions than answers, revealing a detail about its final moments that defies the official record. Why did a vessel designed for stealth meet such a definitive end? And what does the condition of its hull tell us about a final, desperate battle that no one knew happened? The wreck of HMS Trooper tells a story fundamentally different from what naval historians have accepted for 8 decades. When the Maritime archaeology team from Aegean Wreck Survey first captured sonar images of the submarine in September 2024, they expected to find evidence supporting the long-held theory that Trooper struck a German naval mine, a common fate for Allied submarines in these contested waters. What they discovered instead has shattered the official narrative. Dr. Elena Marcos, lead archaeologist on the expedition, describes what their remotely operated vehicle revealed. She says the damage patterns on Trooper's hull are inconsistent with a mine detonation. Instead, the team observed clear evidence of multiple hull breaches along the port side, concentrated around the conning tower and aft sections, classic indicators of depth charge or torpedo damage. The ROV high-resolution imagery shows at least 3 distinct impact points, with the submarine's pressure hull catastrophically compromised in a pattern that naval forensic experts now believe resulted from a coordinated attack. More telling still is what the wreck does not show: the distinctive punch through damage typically associated with mine strikes. This was not a submarine that hit a mine and sank, explains Commander William Harrington, retired Royal Navy submarine officer, consulting on the investigation. This was a submarine that fought back. Most compelling is the position of Trooper's bowplanes and rudder, locked in an extreme dive position, suggesting the crew was attempting evasive maneuvers when catastrophic damage occurred. This is the behavior of a hunted vessel, not one that accidentally encountered a mine. The discovery has ignited a fundamental reassessment of this long-closed chapter of naval history. If Trooper was not destroyed by a mine as officially recorded, then what enemy vessel engaged and sank it? And why was this engagement never documented in Axis naval records? To understand the significance of HMS Trooper's final moments, we must first understand the vessel itself. Commissioned in August 1942, Trooper was a T-class submarine, the backbone of Britain's underwater fleet. At 276 feet long and displacing 1,290 tons when submerged, these vessels represented the cutting edge of British submarine technology. Trooper's specifications made it particularly suited for the Mediterranean theater, with 8 torpedo tubes and a surfaced range of 8,000 nautical miles. It combined lethal striking power with the endurance required for extended patrols in enemy-controlled waters. Commander John Silent Jack Wraith, its 31-year-old captain, had already established a reputation for daring yet methodical submarine warfare. By 1943, the Mediterranean had become increasingly dangerous for Allied submarines. German and Italian anti-submarine warfare capabilities had improved dramatically, with new detection equipment, better trained escort crews, and more sophisticated depth charges. The Luftwaffe's control of the air meant submarines spent more time submerged, operating on limited battery power, and in constant danger of detection. Despite these mounting dangers, Trooper had compiled an impressive operational record. During its first 5 patrols, it sank 7 Axis vessels, including 2 military transports carrying crucial supplies to Rommel's forces in North Africa. On its 6th patrol, Trooper successfully inserted British commandos onto the Greek mainland to sabotage railway infrastructure. Naval historian Dr. Margaret Holloway explains that Trooper was not just any submarine. It represented the peak of British submarine capabilities, a vessel crewed by experienced men who had repeatedly proven their skill in evading detection. By October 1943, the strategic picture in the Mediterranean had shifted dramatically. The Allied invasion of Sicily in July had forced Italy's surrender in September. German forces had quickly moved to occupy former Italian positions throughout the Aegean. For the Royal Navy submarines, this created both opportunity and peril. There were more targets, but also more hunters. The period between September and November 1943 proved particularly deadly for British submarines. HMS Usurper, HMS Trojan, and HMS Simoom were all lost during that period. But it is Trooper's loss that would remain the most mysterious, until now. Trooper's final mission began on October 1, 1943, when it departed Alexandria, Egypt, under sealed orders. Only Commander Wraith knew their full assignment, though his officers understood they were bound for the Aegean. Recently declassified naval archives reveal that Trooper's primary objective was to insert Special Operations Executive Agents, Greek resistance fighters trained by British intelligence, onto Calamos Island. These resistance fighters were tasked with establishing a network that would report on German naval movements following Italy's surrender. With German forces rapidly reinforcing their Aegean positions, accurate intelligence had become critically important for Allied planning. On October 12th, a brief encrypted radio message confirmed Trooper had successfully delivered its human cargo to Calamos. The message read, "Packages delivered. Stop proceeding to secondary objectives. Stop." This would be the last confirmed communication from the submarine. What were these secondary objectives? Naval records indicate HMS Trooper was to conduct a reconnaissance patrol of shipping lanes between Athens and Crete, gathering intelligence on German naval redeployments. The submarine was then to proceed to Beirut, Lebanon, arriving no later than October 17th. Lieutenant Commander George Phillips, who served on HMS Thrasher during this period, described standard procedure. After completing the primary mission, crews would typically conduct a sweep through assigned patrol sectors, looking for targets of opportunity, enemy supply ships, tankers, anything supporting their war effort. But the standing orders were clear: avoid engagement with dedicated anti-submarine vessels whenever possible. When October 17th passed with no sign of Trooper at Beirut, concern quickly mounted at naval headquarters. By October 18th, limited search operations commenced, with reconnaissance aircraft sweeping the eastern Mediterranean for any sign of the submarine. By October 20th, with fuel and oxygen reserves certainly exhausted, Trooper was officially listed as overdue. On November 1st, 1943, the Admiralty changed Trooper's status from missing to presumed lost. The families of 64 men received the telegram that naval families dreaded. Their loved ones were missing in action, presumed killed. Without evidence to the contrary, naval authorities attributed the loss to a mine strike, the most common cause of submarine losses in the Aegean. The sea had claimed another victim, and Trooper joined the growing list of submarines that had sailed into silence. For the families of Trooper's crew, the uncertainty was perhaps the cruelest aspect of their loss. With no witnesses, no survivors, and no wreckage, there could be no clear answers about how their husbands, sons, and brothers had met their end. Margaret Wraith, the widow of Commander Wraith, wrote in her 1947 memoir that they tell us to take comfort that John died in service to his country. But how can there be comfort without knowing? Did he suffer? Was it quick? These questions haunt my dreams. The absence of closure affected dozens of families across Britain. Leading telegraphist Alan Pembroke left behind two young sons who would grow up with only photographs and stories of their father. Stoker First Class William Davies had married just 6 weeks before his final patrol. The Admiralty's conclusion that Trooper had struck a mine became the official record. This explanation appeared in the Naval Staff History published in 1957, and it documented submarine operations during the war. Without evidence to challenge this assessment, it remained unchallenged for decades. Dr. Holloway explains that the Mediterranean seabed holds the wrecks of over 20 British submarines lost during World War II. Until recent advances in deep-water archaeology, most remained undiscovered and unstudied. Each represents not just a military loss, but a human tragedy. These were men who died in darkness, far from home. For naval historians, Trooper's disappearance represented one of many wartime mysteries, filed away as another casualty of the sea's unforgiving nature. With the wreck presumed to lie in waters too deep for investigation, with mid-20th century technology, there seemed little hope of ever determining the true circumstances of the loss. The families formed their own association, the HMS Trooper Remembrance Group, which held annual memorials at Portsmouth Naval Memorial, where all 64 names are inscribed. Over decades, as parents aged and died, the responsibility for remembrance passed to children and grandchildren, many of whom had never met the men they honored. For 81 years, the sea kept its secret. The men of Trooper remained frozen in time, young sailors and officers whose final moments were unknown. Their courage and sacrifice acknowledged, but their true story untold. Until modern technology finally pierced the Mediterranean depths. The search for HMS Trooper began in earnest in 2019, when the Aegean Maritime Heritage Foundation secured funding for a comprehensive survey of suspected British submarine lost positions. Using declassified naval archives, researchers plotted Trooper's likely patrol route, following its confirmed mission to Calamos Island. Dr. Marcos explains that underwater archaeology has been revolutionized in the past decade. Autonomous underwater vehicles can now scan vast areas of seabed with sophisticated multi-beam sonar, identifying potential wrecks that would have been impossible to locate even 20 years ago. The search faced significant challenges. The eastern Mediterranean reaches depths of over 10,000 feet in places, and underwater currents, sediment, and the passage of time conspire to hide or disguise wrecks. The initial search area covered over 200 square miles of seabed, an area larger than Chicago. In March 2024, the breakthrough came when sonar data collected by autonomous underwater vehicles revealed an anomaly approximately 12 nautical miles southeast of Mykonos. The object's dimensions roughly matched those of a T-class submarine, but confirmation would require visual inspection. In September 2024, the research vessel Poseidon deployed its remotely operated vehicle, descending to a depth of 770 feet. As the ROV's lights illuminated the seabed, the unmistakable silhouette of a submarine emerged from the darkness. James Mitchell, the ROV operator, recalls that the moment was electric. After 5 years of searching, suddenly they were looking at a ghost from the past. The conning tower was unmistakable. This was definitely a T-class British submarine. Initial survey footage confirmed the vessel's identity beyond doubt when the ROV captured clear images of the name Trooper, still visible on the conning tower, preserved in the oxygen-poor environment of the deep Mediterranean. After 81 years, HMS Trooper had been found. But the discovery was just the beginning of a much more complex investigation that would challenge everything historians thought they knew about the submarine's fate. The remotely operated vehicle that surveyed Trooper's wreck immediately revealed anomalies that contradicted the long-accepted mine strike theory. The submarine rests upright on the seabed, its hull largely intact, but with significant damage concentrated on the port side. Naval architect Dr. Richard Landis explains that a mine strike typically creates a localized but catastrophic breach, and what investigators see on Trooper is different. There are multiple impact points along the port side, consistent with a pattern of depth charges dropped in sequence, or with torpedo strikes. Most revealing is the pattern of debris surrounding the wreck. The scattered field suggests an explosion of significant force that blew out portions of the pressure hull. Metallurgical analysis of hull plating, based on high-resolution video evidence, indicates the steel was pushed inward by external explosions rather than outward, as would be expected from a mine detonation against the hull. The remotely operated vehicle documented 3 major breach points. One lies just aft of the conning tower, one is midway along the pressure hull, and one is near the engine room. This pattern is consistent with depth charge attacks in which multiple charges are dropped in sequence to bracket a submerged target. The submarine's hydroplanes, the control surfaces that manage diving and surfacing, tell perhaps the most poignant story. They are set at maximum dive angle, suggesting Commander Wraith ordered it in an emergency dive in a desperate attempt to evade an attacker. Commander Harrington says this was not a submarine that blundered into a minefield. This was a submarine actively evading an enemy it knew was hunting it. Most puzzling is the complete absence of any German or Italian naval records documenting an engagement with a British submarine in this area during mid-October 1943. If Trooper was destroyed by enemy action, why was this success not claimed in Axis war records? The most plausible theory emerging from the evidence suggests Trooper was caught on the surface, possibly at night while recharging batteries, by a German patrol vessel. In the ensuing engagement, the submarine attempted to dive, but was successfully attacked with depth charges. The German vessel may have been operating under radio silence, or the engagement might have gone unreported for strategic reasons. What is certain is that the physical evidence now contradicts 8 decades of historical understanding. HMS Trooper did not strike a mine. It fought a final battle against an enemy whose identity remains unknown. The discovery of HMS Trooper represents more than just a clarification of the historical record. It finally brings closure to families who have waited generations for answers. As a designated war grave, the wreck site will remain undisturbed, protected under international maritime law. Michael Pembroke, nephew of leading telegraphist Alan Pembroke, says his grandfather never knew what happened to his brother. He died still wondering. Now at least we know where Uncle Alan rests, and something of how he and his crewmates met their end. The British Ministry of Defence has organized a memorial service at sea above the wreck site, where descendants of Trooper's crew will gather to pay respects. A wreath of 64 poppies, one for each man lost, will be laid on the waters. Beyond the personal significance for families, the discovery has profound historical importance. It forces a reevaluation of naval operations in the Aegean during this critical period of World War II. If German or Italian forces were successfully engaging Allied submarines without reporting these actions, other unexplained submarine losses may need re-examination. The story of HMS Trooper reminds us that history is never truly complete. Even 81 years after the events, new evidence can emerge to challenge our understanding of the past. For the 64 men who sailed aboard Trooper, this discovery ensures their sacrifice will not be forgotten, and the true circumstances of their courage will finally be acknowledged. They will be remembered. In the words of poet Lawrence Binyon, inscribed on war memorials throughout the Commonwealth, at the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. The men of HMS Trooper have found their place in history, no longer lost, but eternally on patrol in their final resting place beneath the Aegean waves. This has been an Ocean Attacks investigation into one of World War II's most enduring naval mysteries. If you value these deep dives into maritime history, consider subscribing to our channel for more untold stories from beneath the waves. Our next expedition explores the forgotten Pacific submarine campaigns of 1944, mysteries that have remained silent for nearly a century. Hit the notification bell to join us on this journey into the depths of naval warfare. Until next time, the ocean's secrets await.